Filament Friday is brought to you every week by the generous donations of my Patreon supporters. This is the Wanhao Duplicator 7. I got this from the Ultimate 3D Printing Store, ultimate3dprintingstore.com. Well, I brought in the expert, Jim Carter. You're big on social media. What's your Twitter tag?
You can find me on Twitter at JWC Productions. I also have a very small YouTube channel, another 3D printing channel. But
I said, Jim, you want to help me sort this out because I can't figure out how to get this thing to work. And he was gracious enough to take it home, and he figured it out. And now you've got several printers. This is your Delta back here, right?
It's my CNC row stock Max V3.
And then you've got a Wanhao,
I've got a Monoprice Maker Select version 2.
Which is like a Wanhao rebrand.
Yeah, it's another i3.
So, so you're familiar with Wanhao, and then you've got a CTC.
Yep, CTC.
So you're very familiar with FDM. Have you ever done SLA or the DLP? What is this, SLA or DLP?
This is DLP. SLA uses a laser. DLP uses some sort of a projection onto something with UV lights to make it all cure. So no lasers. I call this DLP.
My biggest thing is it runs Windows software, or the software for this is Windows. I'm a Mac guy. And I have a Windows laptop, but I could not get the HDMI port to work. This requires an HDMI setup because it's like a second screen on your computer. So you figured this out with
Raspberry
Pi. Yeah.
On the SD card in the back, you load your operating system, which in this case, for this machine, is something called Nano DLP.
Wait, now this is software that's you've loaded on the SD card that you put on the Raspberry Pi that's just running a Linux.
Absolutely, Linux in the background, but instead of it running Windows, it runs a program called Nano DLP.
So so Nano DLP is a program for this machine.
I mean, what's another $30? Yeah. To make it work, another $30.
It's almost like why don't they put this inside, right? Now, resin is the filament for these guys. It's a liquid resin that you actually pour into this thing, and that's how you do your prints. We've got some from Monocure, and then some came with the D7, some resin. So you have some to print out of the box.
Yep.
And this Monocure actually donated some to the channel for you to try out. Yep. So we'll talk about these two guys. How did the Wanhao stuff work?
It was awesome. I got 3 or 4 or 5 prints off of it, even your chest pawn.
Printed my chest pawn, and I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised. The ball on the top, it didn't get underneath the ball. It kind of printed it straight, but the rest of it is really, really smooth. This would be great for finishing, but I actually like the results off my Prusa MK2S and my CR10 actually a little better. If I do a real fine print. So I'm a little surprised by that, but you've got some other great prints here, such as this Eiffel Tower. And this was actually done with the Monocure.
It was done with the Monocure Rapid Gray.
Okay, so this, you were telling me, which kind of bugs me, this stuff stinks, right?
Yes.
So if you're going to use this type of printer, that's one drawback, is you've got to put up with the smell.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel that it makes you nauseous, but there is definitely a smell in it.
So you definitely want good ventilation, and probably more than you would with a ABS printing, which, you know, I don't mind. So the detail in this is absolutely incredible. I'm blown away by, you can see the girders so clearly. I'll show a close-up of this. This was done with the Monocure. So how would you compare? Would you say the Monocure is the recommended? That at least between the two?
Personally would between the two. It seems like it works nicer in the machine, and it's something that's widely loved and accepted by everybody in the community of this printer. Like on Facebook with the D7 group, it's
a lot of people recommend
everything I've read and talked to people, that's their go-to.
And what's the cost? Do you know what the cost is for a bottle?
I'll tell you, you can pick up 3 bottles. You can pick up the 3-bottle sample pack for, I think it's under $100 US, or right around $100.
Right around $100.
It comes straight out of Australia.
And you've printed a bunch of stuff, and this thing's probably about half full.
Yeah, a little more than half, but yeah.
And this is the clear.
That's the clear.
And you actually printed a Benchy. What's interesting about this, I wouldn't call this a fantastic print, which is typically what you're supposed to get off this. You printed this. You didn't print it flat. Is my point.
So some things like this that are larger, the folks say to print on a 45-degree angle and build the supports, and then send the STL over.
So yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned that you do send the STL to the Raspberry Pi, and then it slices it, and I drop the print.
There's a lot of finicky things to learn with this in processes, where with FDM, take your file, slice it, throw it into whatever your favorite slicer is, put it on a card, and hit print. There's a lot of little steps to be able to get to that.
Okay. All the additions he's made to it. I want you to explain some of these additions. You got something here on top, you got something on the side, you got a bunch of little pieces that you printed. And these were all printed on
FDM.
FDM. So you kind of needed a printer to print for your printer.
In this case, yeah. I didn't have much of a choice. Something like this at the top, this printer is known to have a Z-wobble issue pretty severely. You grab a 608 bearing from all those fidget spinners that we've thrown away, and there you go. And that wobble is gone. That is not moving at all.
Okay, so this was just 3D printed.
That's it.
On your FDM, put a bearing inside, fix that issue.
You got it.
Okay, and then you got something over here on the side that you've added. What does that do?
Well, so when this is done, there's a lot of ooze happening from the loose resin. So basically what you do is you take your plate off, bring it right over here.
And then your part would be sitting on it like this.
Yep.
Right?
Now everything in the Z would be higher, but now everything is going to drip right back down into the vat, so you don't waste any resin.
Okay, and then you've got a few other things here. You got like a cover.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other add-ons that I found on Thingiverse, when you're done printing and you want to kind of cut down, I use this to cut down on the smell myself, but also so nothing falls in here and gets dirty or dusty, just like that. So it keeps the resin that you have in there.
Okay, so this makes it easier. This makes it easier to drip the thing off. But this you found actually needed to get better prints out of it. But all these are available.
Everything
on Thingiverse.
Yeah, you just search D7 on Thingiverse, Wanhao D7. Now the funny thing is, this piece here is now stock on the new version 1.4 Red.
Oh, so they've actually added this. What are the steps to post-process a print
remove
off?
from the plate with gloves, mind you. You have to wear gloves with this stuff.
You don't want this touching
You don't
your
want
skin.
this touching your skin at all. Once it's removed, you have to take your print carefully and put it in some isopropyl alcohol, IPA, and let it sit for a little while, and that will wash off the loose resin that's still on the print. Once that's done, you now have to finish curing the resin.
Is that where people put it outside in the sun?
You can do that. That's one of the more popular ways. I have a nail dryer that you'd find at a nail salon. Found it on Amazon, though, so, you
can do your nails while you're doing
you
that.
can.
Yeah.
You just take the print, and the best thing to do, so the print has a nice finish and it's not sticky, is to put your print in a jar of water and then put that in front of the UV light to cure for an X amount of time, which I haven't figured out yet. The Benchy is yellow, and the Rook is more of a frosted clear. And that's because I over-cured the Benchy. The castle here.
You got this, it's a little castle. This thing is really detailed. It's incredible. And this is actually pretty clear.
Absolutely.
So this one came out good. So if you get the post-processing right, you can get down to some really clear, because you could never 3D print this with FDM.
Nothing that
clear like
level
that.
of detail, not that small.
Not that anything I've seen anyway. So there's a lot of steps to this. If you weren't familiar with all this, hopefully this has helped you guys out. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm glad I gave it to him to deal with. And so basically what you've told me is it smells, you got to do a lot of post-processing, and you got to add a Raspberry Pi to get this thing to work, or at least it helps. I don't know. You guys be the judge if this is the type of thing you want. I could see where in certain situations where you need that detail, where you're making jewelry, I guess, like things
Absolutely.
like that. You've done some amazing prints. Just not sure it's for me, but you know what? You just keep this thing, and if I need a print, tell you what.
You know how to get a hold of it.
I'll get a hold of you. How's that for a deal?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Thanks
No
for going through this. If you guys have any questions, you can get Jim on social media. If you have questions, or leave it in the comments below. We'll try to get them answered. I hope this was helpful. Not a typical review like I've done, but thanks for stopping by.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you next time. Filament Friday.